On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the fighting of World War I ended in 1918. Due to the conclusion of the war to end all wars, November 11th became a universally recognized day of celebration. The day was originally declared Armistice Day 8 years after the end of World War I and honored only veterans of that war. Then, in 1954, after World War II and the Korean War, it was renamed Veterans Day to honor all veterans who served America in war and defended democracy. So, today, we honor all of our veterans who unselfishly placed their lives on the line for our freedom. Those men and women were ordinary people until they heard the call of duty and answered it. They left their families, their homes, and their lives, not for recognition or fame, or even the honor we bestow upon them today. They fought to protect our country, to maintain our way of life. As we honor our veterans and remember their great deeds, let us also salute those who are currently fighting for our freedom. We would like to honor our veterans by performing the service songs of each branch of the U.S. Armed Forces. Veterans, when you hear your hymn played, please stand to be recognized.
The Marine Corps. The Army. The Coast Guard. The Merchant Marines. The Air Force. The Navy.
Today, we are honored to welcome Ross Koenig as our keynote speaker for Veterans Day. Mr. Koenig is a former principal at Crystal City and a former history teacher here at Jefferson High School. He joins us today to share personal and moving stories from his father, Ralph Koenig, a proud military veteran. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce Mr. Ross Koenig to give our keynote address.
Good afternoon, and thank you. Today we gather to honor the brave men and women who have worn our nation's uniform with dignity and pride. In every generation, in times of peace and in times of war, American veterans have stepped forward to defend not just our borders, but our ideals. They have stood guard over our freedoms, protected our way of life, and sacrificed more than many of us will ever know. I ask you to look around this room, students especially. Among us are men and women who have witnessed history firsthand, who have shaped it with their courage, and who continue to inspire us to this day. Their stories, your stories, are the stories of America itself. Every veteran has a story, and while I am not a veteran myself, and I feel a touch of imposter syndrome standing before you today, I have been asked to share the story of a veteran very special to me, my father, Ralph Koenig. His story is no more extraordinary or unique than those of the veterans in this room, or of other service members you may know. But it is his story. By sharing it with you today, I hope to encourage others to learn about the stories and courage of sacrifice from the veterans in their own lives. Like me, you might discover something remarkable. As I speak today, I invite the veterans among us to reflect on your own journeys, your experiences, each unique, contribute to the long-standing tradition of courage and selflessness that has shaped our country's history. My father's story begins like many others, a young man growing up in St. Charles, Missouri, in what seems a much simpler time, playing bottle cap baseball, hunting pheasants, fishing, and playing shortstop for the local American Legion baseball team. He graduated college in the 60s as the Vietnam War was escalating, and would be leaving his Pi Kappa Alpha fraternity and college life he enjoyed behind. Following graduation, life seemed to follow a steady rhythm. He taught high school physical education and coached multiple sports in a small town in central Missouri. In a time where he could give his players the keys to the gym on a Saturday, go home to listen to the Cardinal game on the radio, and check in on them periodically as needed. A change of fate. The year was 1968, and my father stood at a crossroads. Recently married at the age of 24 to my mother, Karen, he had recently been awarded a graduate assistantship at Central Missouri State University to coach alongside his former high school coach, Gene Bartow. For those unfamiliar, Coach Bartow would later take over the UCLA Bruins head coaching duties after the legendary John Wooden. Plans were made and an apartment secured for the beginning of the 1968 school year. At the time, his draft status was 2A, which meant he was deferred because of his civilian occupation as a teacher. At the conclusion of his teacher's contract, and if he accepted the assistantship at Central Missouri State, his draft status would change to 1A, or available for military service, for 13 days until his 26th birthday, at which time he would no longer be draft eligible. At this crossroads, do you risk it and go for what was a dream opportunity or not? He did risk it, and in doing so, his draft status changed to available for military service and was drafted within that 13-day window. He soon left for basic training and everything he knew behind, including a young wife. Basic training led to advanced infantry training in Fort Dix, New Jersey, after which he was assigned to his new duty station in South Vietnam. In the late spring of 1969, he became part of the 9th Infantry Division of the United States Army. On the ground, in primarily the Mekong Delta, protecting South Vietnamese from Viet Cong insurgents, and all the challenges that entailed. He successfully made his tour of duty and made the return trip back to the U.S., arriving in country in Oakland, California, where he learned his younger brother was en route. They were able to spend an evening together before each went to their assigned stations. My father to Fort Lee, Virginia, his brother to South Vietnam, where he served as a door gunner and helicopter mechanic for General Hill. I've never asked my father what they spoke about that evening, but I do wonder. One brother coming home, the other about to face the uncertainties of war. Was it lighthearted and brotherly, or was it steeped in advice and heaviness? After my father's time in the United States Army, he returned to work in the field of education, where he taught physical education, driver's education, and special education while helping to raise a family. You may have noticed that I passed over a major part of his story, the actual time spent in Vietnam and the time he served in the United States Army. A part of my father's experience in the military included being involved in a war which was both ugly and scary. My father doesn't talk much about it. That part of the story is not mine to tell. I share what I do because he is a veteran, someone who, like you, became a member of a select group of people who, as my father puts it, did what they needed to do. Many under extreme circumstances and having life-changing experiences. That part of their own individual story understood only by other veterans. Like many, these experiences influenced the rest of his life. Unexpected blessings. Because of his experience, my parents adopted my sister Lai Ly in 1975. Lai Ly was a 5.5-month-old Vietnamese, failure-to-thrive baby orphan who came to the United States at the end of the war during Operation Baby Lift. Operation Baby Lift was part of a larger operation conducted by the Air Force working with the Navy and private contractors, which the Air Mobility Command Museum called the largest aerial evacuation in history. Without my father's experience and the heroism of the service members included in the operation, her story would have been entirely different. Also, because of his experience, my Vietnamese sister Dee joined the family a year later in 1976, after being airlifted from the United States Embassy rooftop during the fall of Saigon, where she was working at the age of 14. She was told to pack for a couple of weeks and that she would be back. That would not be the case, and after stops at several refugee camps throughout the globe, she eventually made her way to Arkansas before being fostered by my parents. Her birth parents, who lived in rural Vietnam when Saigon fell, hadn't heard from Dee in 2 years following her evacuation at the age of 14. Without his experience or the courage of those who helped, her story would have been entirely different. There are also countless stories of loved ones who stayed behind while their son, daughter, husband, or wife went off in the service of their country, oftentimes thousands of miles away, with their lives and plans put on hold as they waited anxiously, unsure of the outcome. These stories shine a light on the sacrifices made not just by those in uniform, but by their families as well. Every veteran has a story. My father's is just one of many. I would suggest that if you are willing to talk with veterans about whatever they would like to share, you might find out that the veteran that you thought you knew as your grandpa or aunt or father or mother may actually be somewhat of a superhero and are living monuments to American courage and sacrifice. To the veterans here today, your stories may not seem extraordinary to you. You might think, as my father does, that you simply did what needed to be done. But to us, your children, your spouses, your community, you are living testimonies to the power of people facing extraordinary circumstances with extraordinary courage. We may never fully understand what you carried or what you still carry, but we see the echoes of your service in the communities that you've strengthened. My father's 13-day risk inadvertently gave 2 Vietnamese girls the chance to write new stories of their own. Your service, too, has rippled outward in ways you may truly never know. So today, I honor not just my father, but all of you who served. You are not just veterans, you are keepers of stories that need to be remembered. And while some of those stories may remain untold, their power lives on in the country and communities you help to protect. Thank you for your time, thank you for your service, and God bless.
Mr. Koenig, thank you for joining us today and sharing the stories of your father on behalf of all of us. Please thank Mr. Koenig for his service to our country and community.